Welcome, my dear audience and friends, to Cancer Convos with Grace B. This is your host, Grace B, coming to you from New York City, the city that never sleeps and is home to Cancer Convos with Grace B. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much once again for supporting our channel. For the newbies, this show aims to demystify the cancer disease and to bring on experts and stakeholders in the cancer space to come give their take. So, for those who may not be aware, March is Colon Cancer Awareness Month, and the stats, according to the American Cancer Society, show that colon cancer is the third leading cause of cancer-related deaths in men and women. In 2022, an estimated 151,030 people will be diagnosed with this highly preventable disease. In 2022, more than 52,000 people will die of colon cancer nationwide. And then colon cancer incidence and mortality rates are disproportionately higher among racial and ethnic minorities. It is why, as an ally, yes, Cancer Convos with Grace B is an ally, we are absolutely delighted to host a super patient leader and advocate who, aside from being a colon cancer warrior, is doing amazing work in cancer advocacy with a primary focus on men and caregivers. But you may ask, why men? Because we know that they are the last ones to talk about their health concerns, right? And even to seek help. True, isn't it? We know them and we live with them. So he'll be sharing with us his valid insights on how to prevent it, symptoms to look out for, and wisdom nuggets. My guest is the founder of Man Up to Cancer, an online community that inspires men to avoid isolation during their cancer journeys. This group is a safe haven for all men impacted by cancer, even as patients, as survivors, and also their caregivers are not left out, in order to support one another through their cancer journeys. He has been living with stage 4 colon cancer ever since March 2018, and believe you me, he has undergone 4 major surgeries, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, and a clinical trial. He lives in Maine with his beautiful wife and gorgeous 2 teenage daughters. So, without much ado, let me welcome my crush, Trevor Maxwell, to the show.
Oh my
Welcome, Trev,
goodness.
and we are so delighted to have you. Thank you so much for coming, Trev.
Grace, thank you. I am blushing like from ear to ear right now because you are a shining light and a beacon of hope, and it is my honor to be here with you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a blessing to have you with us. So let's dive straight into the show. Trevor, why don't you start off first by telling the audience a little bit more about yourself, even though I had done that in the intro, please.
Of course. And let me just say before I dive in that it's been a pleasure to get to know you through advocacy. You know, cancer has sucked in a lot of ways for me for the past 4 years, but one of the bright silver linings is meeting some of the most amazing people in the world, and you're one of those people.
Bless. Oh my
and
God.
and so that is just really cool, and I'm lucky in that way. So you're from so again,
Thank you.
I'm from a small town in Maine. You are down there in the city that never sleeps. I'm up here in a state that pretty much sleeps all the time. There's not much going on up here. It's a very rural state, as you probably know. We are two hours north of Boston. Very small population. Hardworking, mostly a blue collar state.
Mhm.
So my background is, I was born and raised here. I went off to, and I've always been a writer, and communicator. Went off to the University of Iowa for my schooling. And then, like most of us Mainers, we tend to come back to where we were raised. So I came back
Yeah.
here to start a family, and you mentioned my beautiful wife Sarah. She's my high school sweetheart.
Oh,
So
bless.
I'm 45, she's 44, and we've been together for 30 years, which is crazy.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
you don't hear that too often these
Oh
days.
no, these days, but this is, oh my God, this is
So,
fantastic.
so
I
I
have
lucked out. I
goosebumps.
know I lucked out big time, and we have, like as you mentioned, Sage and Elsie, who are 16 and 14. So they were 12 and 10 when I was diagnosed, and so prior to cancer, so my background is kind of multifaceted. Always been a writer, always loved reading and writing. Got into journalism pretty early on, and then
Nice.
so my professional background is as a journalist, and then also as a I started I got into public relations and communications and all that stuff. And yeah, I just, before diagnosis, I was kind of just rolling along. As I was 41. Life was going well. I had, growing family and busy life up here right outside of Portland, Maine. And then I just started getting super tired.
Mm.
And that was really my first clue that there was something going on, is the winter. So this is 4 years this month of my diagnosis. And like a lot of guys, I had not been to the doctor in quite a while. I just, if something was wrong, I would just deal with it and move along. I hadn't done any checks or cancer checks or anything like that. I didn't even think of anything like that. So, but as I got more and more tired, I finally reached out to my primary care doctor and said, I just doesn't feel right. Like there was, I'm very physical. So that's a big part of my identity is, just hiking and biking and getting outside, playing with the kids. We heat our house with wood, and so splitting wood and bringing it into the barn and all that stuff, like
Oh,
it's kind of
wonderful.
a rural
Yeah.
lifestyle. And I would find myself just exhausted. Like I would load up a couple bins of wood, and then I'd just be like, panting. And so one day I'm just climbing the stairs, and my heart is just pounding on my chest. So finally I did call my doctor, and that's when everything kind of started, because she had me do blood test, and that's when we learned that I was anemic. So anemia, lack of iron in the blood, as it turns out, is a big indicator in an otherwise healthy person at age 41. If you all of a sudden develop anemia, generally you're losing blood somewhere.
Hmm.
And so she said, we need to get you in for a colonoscopy.
Wow, that's something else. So, how were you able to, what did your treatment, what did, a colonoscopy, for those that don't really know what it entails, what is the
Sure.
process? Because even those that know what it entails, it puts them off, How would you encourage, what does it entail?
So looking back on it, the colonoscopy has been the least of my worries, right? It's not a big deal. It
Hmm.
is basically you go in and they give you some kind of sleepy twilight drugs. So I didn't even remember the procedure really.
Okay.
And basically what it is it's an outpatient procedure, or sometimes in the hospital, but the doctor inserts a very thin scope
Hmm.
into your anus and into your intestinal system,
Hmm.
and the scope goes up through your into your rectum and then into your intestines, and that
Hmm.
scope can go all the way through your large intestine and look for anything out of the ordinary.
Hmm.
And really, this is the major tool that we have to see if there is any cancer developing in the large intestine. So I didn't really even know that colon was another name for large intestine.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, now I'm like an expert in all this
We
stuff, of course.
didn't know a lot of things until cancer hit us.
Exactly. um so yeah, so it's a tool that doctors use generally around, for a normal healthy person who hasn't had any symptoms, which I'm sure we'll get into later.
Hmm.
The age at which you're supposed to get a colonoscopy is now 45.
Hmm.
And that is just like I said, they just put a scope in you and they check out your plumbing.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds, you know it's not fun. Like, it is off-putting. People are like, heck, I don't want to do that. But guess what? Getting a colonoscopy is a heck of a lot easier than dealing with colon cancer. And as you
Absolutely.
said at the top of the show, colon cancer is preventable, and colonoscopy is right now the best tool we have to
Hmm.
detect. So oftentimes you'll get a colonoscopy and they'll find these things called polyps, and polyps are basically the beginning, like pre-cancer. So it's not cancer yet, but it could be if you let them go. And
Hmm.
oftentimes doctors just remove these polyps during a colonoscopy. It's very easy. and then, you're good.
Mhm.
So yeah, and we can get more into that later if you want, but
Oh,
that's
sure.
essentially, that's what a colonoscopy is. It's really not that big a deal. The worst part is people talk about is the prep, which you drink like basically a powder and a liquid that make you go to the bathroom quite a bit so that you can clear out your system before the doctor goes in and takes a look.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything is free when you're about to do the exam, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So, where are you currently in your treatment plan?
Yeah. So after, in that colonoscopy, the doctor found a very large tumor. It was about 10 centimeters. So I had a kind of like a softball sized tumor in my large intestine.
Mm.
And the first surgery I had was to remove that. So they took out about a foot. So large intestine is actually a very long organ. So
Yes.
they took out about a foot of it, which didn't hasn't affected my functioning at all. They took out a foot of my large intestine that had the tumor in it, and then the next step is to find out whether it's metastatic. Right? Has your cancer gone beyond the colon into other organs?
Mhm.
Unfortunately for me, we learned that my cancer had indeed metastasized to my liver. So the liver for colorectal cancer is the first, usually, often the first spot of metastasis. It's just kind of a highway for blood vessels, and
Mhm.
and so I had a spot in my liver. So as you mentioned on the outset, it's basically been like whack-a-mole. I
Mhm.
had the colon surgery, then I had a liver resection, and then I recurred, and then I had another liver resection. So when I say resection, it's basically just go in and take the part out with the tumor.
Hang
Yeah,
on,
go ahead.
Trev. You said you had a recurrence?
Yes. So I've had multiple recurrences.
What's the space? What's the time in
Yeah.
between?
So
Yeah.
so I was diagnosed, like you said, in March 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I had the primary tumor, the colon tumor, removed in April. Then I had my first liver surgery, my liver resection in November of 2018. I had a
Mm.
recurrence and had another liver resection in May of 2019.
Wow.
And then I recurred again after that, another single spot in the liver. So usually with colorectal cancer, like if you have disease in your liver, oftentimes it's spread out, like there's lots of disease, lots of tumors, and that's a lot harder to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I just had these little like singular tumors popping up. So that's why I went the surgical route. Um, and I also did chemo during that time. So then I recurred again in the summer of 2019, and that's when we decided, you know, this surgery route isn't really working out for me. That we
Mm-hmm.
need to do systemic therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So like more systemic therapy. So with my particular tumor type, I was a candidate for immunotherapy,
Okay.
because of my certain characteristics of my tumor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started immunotherapy in the fall of 2019, and I was on that for over a year, and mostly stable. So pretty much stable for more than a year. Everything was good. And then the thing is with cancer is it's really smart.
Mm.
So the cancer, I was keeping it at bay, but all of a sudden the cancer mutates and finds a way around. So whatever you're throwing at it for weaponry, it tends to like
It will dodge.
yeah, and then it starts dodging it, right?
Yeah.
So this would have been early 2021. I started to have more growth, and at that point, the cancer had spread out into my abdomen. So the peritoneum is basically that space that holds all your abdominal organs in it. And I
Mm-hmm.
started to have tumors kind of spread out like in between my stomach and my spleen. And like, so just generally in the abdomen, I started having these tumors kind of pop up. And so immunotherapy wasn't cutting it anymore. So last year I went on the big guns. Uh, I call it the kitchen sink chemo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for those in the colorectal cancer world, this was called FOLFOXIRI with Avastin, and it's basically
Wow.
four drugs, four things that they throw at you to just bomb the cancer, and it worked great.
So
So
it's like a cocktail kind of thing. Okay.
totally, yeah, exactly. It's a cocktail chemo, and it is hellacious. I was very sick for a lot of the year.
Oh
Um,
dear.
you know, pretty rough, but you know what? You get through.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked so well that my tumors in my abdomen shrunk up pretty good. So that last September, this was about almost 6 months ago, I had my fourth major surgery, which was called CRS. So it's called cytoreductive surgery. And basically what that is the doctor just opened up my whole abdomen, went in and took out all the visible cancer he could find.
Wonderful.
And then I followed that up with some more chemo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been, I think that's like, yeah, so it was September. We're talking now in March. So in that
Like
period
6 months.
oh yeah. So I finished my cleanup chemo in November. So I've been off treatment since November of 2021,
Oh.
and I'm on surveillance now. So,
Thank God. Honestly,
and feeling good. I feel like, yes, I'm getting my energy back, and thank you, Grace.
yes, you're doing very
So
well,
that's where.
Trev.
Thank you, and that's where I am now. Is I am on surveillance. I do scans every 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
and and yeah, my chance of recurrence being metastatic colorectal cancer is very high. But I'll deal with those things if they come.
Yes,
Right now I'm just enjoying my family and enjoying my time,
absolutely.
feeling good.
Yes,
And I plan
absolutely.
to stay, I plan to stick around for a long time.
You will be here. You will be here for a very long time. I promise you that you will be. And
Thank you, my dear.
it all has to do with faith and determination, honestly. I believe in the power of the tongue. Whatever we say is going to happen, it's going to happen. You don't have to wait till somebody, says something. We can will it, yes. Well done,
I,
Trev,
I
honestly.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Well done. So during all
Ooh,
this time,
well, I'm a,
huh? What did
oh,
you
I was just
say?
going to say, well, you said well done. And I kind of felt like, you know what? I accept that and I appreciate that. But
Yeah.
man, like, it's time for an extended break because I'm pretty tired.
I know that. I know that. But you've come a long way. You have come a long
Yes,
way.
thank you.
Those stages, I mean, you've kept at it. Many people would have given up, and said, okay, what will be, will be. But I'm sure that
Well,
when you look back at your family, you say, I've got to move, man. So
that's
that
it.
is a powerful incentive, family.
You nailed it. I was just gonna say that without them, I wouldn't be here,
Yes.
and I'm lucky to have that support.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't have that, and I'm very aware of that. So they motivate me every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Trev. So what was your state of mind during this time? Were you offered any psychosocial support, or did you reach out and ask for? Because I know many people who said they were upset that they weren't offered. They probably would have done much better. Were you?
I was lucky with that too. I was offered. So my cancer center reached out. They have social workers, and social workers would visit and just make sure that I was, if I needed any psychosocial support. So I did a couple meetings early on with a counselor, but then I didn't keep up with it,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really on me, because that's the point where all that physical stuff I just said, all those surgeries, all the chemo, all the immunotherapy, all of that physical stuff was nothing compared to the emotional distress that I went through,
Mm.
and sometimes continue to go through. But back then, like, I would say early on in my journey, like probably the first 6 to 12 months, I experienced some real crippling anxiety, depression, grief. So I went to a really dark place with my mental health, and that was, looking back on it, that was really the lowest point.
Mm. I know. Cancer is a very traumatic experience too. Just to put it out there that as a cancer survivor like you, I think that if not for family, we really wouldn't be here. And yeah, that is a story for another day. But with you, I'm so
Yeah.
happy that you were able to cross that bridge and look at to this point now, you know. So
Yeah. And again, it was my wife.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It was my wife just encouraging me. And when I was in that dark place, not, refusing to give up on me and believing that I was going to get better mental health. And
yes.
so that's really when I started, right around the end of 2018 into 2019, I started taking care of my mental health. I
Mm-hmm,
started seeing a counselor.
mm-hmm,
I started going to group therapy.
mm-hmm.
I started doing more exercise and reaching out to other people, other young, quote unquote, younger people, because 41 is still relatively young
Of
to have a
course,
cancer like this.
of course.
And I started, meeting people online who were other patients and survivors. And so that's really when I started to turn around my mental health,
Mm-hmm.
was just by realizing that I couldn't do it on my own. That was the biggest thing, was accepting the fact that I needed help, number one. And as we're going to talk about, like, as a man, that's sometimes the biggest hurdle that you have to get over.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So why do you think men generally, like I said in the intro, and you have just mentioned now, why do you think men are usually the last to open up about their health concerns? You know, I have
So,
brothers,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
had a dad, I have friends. It's the same all over, you know. What is it?
I think it's, if you watch television or watch movies or commercials, read magazines, there's a certain image of what a man should be. So when you're a kid, you have this idea that men should be strong, men should be invincible, men should carry everything on their backs.
Hmm.
And if there's a problem that comes up, it's a man's responsibility to just suck it up, man
Man
up,
up.
and and be tough and just move on. You're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to burden others. If you get hurt, you rub dirt on it and you move on. So I think we're all conditioned. All of us have been conditioned in culture
Hmm.
to deal with problems on our own, to not seek help. So I think that's it. I just think it's the way we're raised, in a way that teaches us that individuality is more important than community. And which is crazy, right? Like, think about sports teams,
Yes.
like, or even armies or anything. Like, you can't do anything as an individual. You always have to do something as part of a pack or a community.
True.
So yeah, I just think that that's the way we were raised. And so men are afraid to show that. They don't want to reach out for help, and they don't want to seem weak. They don't want to seem weak to others, because they feel like that is, puts them in a vulnerable position. So really, I think that's the core of it.
Yes. And, you know, with what you do with the howling, which you'll talk about very soon, and Man Up to Cancer
Man up to
podcast.
cancer. Yeah.
Yes. How have you been able to, or are you trying to change the mindset of these men who approach you to, who were, should I say, hitherto reluctant to open up about their health concerns? Have you been able to change their mindset, or have you been able to at all?
Yeah, I absolutely. That is the goal, is to change that culture. Really, what we want to do is really show people that we are smarter and we are stronger as a pack than we are as lone wolves.
Hmm.
And it's clear, like, the lone wolf is vulnerable. The lone wolf doesn't survive, but the pack survives. So,
Hmm.
and that applies to us going through cancer, because if you're a guy who does everything on your own, doesn't want help, doesn't need a community, that's fine. And I that rugged individualism gets people a long way. But when it comes to coping with cancer, life-threatening illness,
Hmm.
if you try to do it alone, there's major negative consequences. The people who isolate going through cancer have worse medical outcomes. They have worse mental health, and their relationships are worse.
Yes, absolutely. The relationships are
So
worse. Yes.
yes, so my message is that if you isolate, there's a lot of negative stuff that's going to come your way, and so when you're not isolating, that's when you're learning about treatment options and second opinions and also that psychosocial like support when you're part of a community that has your back.
Mm-hmm.
When you have friends and a community that's going to be there for you no matter what, that just gives you so much in the fight. It gives
True.
you it gives you that spirit that you really, like you said, like you have to come out at cancer with everything you have,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be exhausting, and if you don't have a community to support you, it's tough.
Ask on your platforms, Man Up to Cancer. Please tell us more, and The Howling. Tell us more about that. Those two platforms.
Yes. So I was talking about reaching out for help and getting help for my mental health. And when I did that, I realized that everywhere I went, it was like 80% females. And so men were just like we talked about, we're just not reaching out to get help. So I said, let's do something about that. We need to provide some role models and start changing the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So Man Up to Cancer, I started a couple of years ago. I have a podcast. I have a website, social media channels, and I have the Howling Place group on Facebook. So we have more than 1,500 men who are impacted by all types of cancer, not just colorectal, but all types.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're a patient, a survivor, a caregiver, if you're a man, you're welcome in our community. And it's all just about camaraderie, brotherhood,
Mm-hmm.
and general support. We also just launched this month, we just launched a chemo backpack program. So we are going to be sending backpacks filled with all kinds of comfort items to men in our community who are going through chemotherapy. So that's the summary of what Man Up to Cancer is. And really, at the end of the day, it's a simple call to action
Mm-hmm.
so that men avoid isolation going through the journey.
Absolutely. So these nuggets that you have shared with them, they are responding positively, I guess, going by what you're saying, right?
Definitely. I think, we need to give men more credit. Like a lot of people, like we talk about, yes, men are reluctant and oftentimes they don't want to talk about it or they don't want to seek help or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But if you provide a community for them, I just put up the walls and man, they are taking advantage. There are
Yeah.
men in our group having deep conversations every day and supporting each other
Mm-hmm.
fiercely every day. Like someone will come on and be like, oh man, just got my blood work back. This is a rough day for me. It's not looking good. And there'll be, 20 to 30 comments of the guy of the
Oh
guys
boy.
in the group saying, you know what, hey, we got your back. We're with you. What do you need? Like it's that kind of unconditional love, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. And so, yeah, they're definitely taking the ball and running with it. Like they see the benefits of getting that support and then they want to provide that for others too. So it's really, it really has developed into a movement. And what we want to do is we want to lead this space of changing the way men cope with cancer. The old way, like we talked about, was just do everything on your own, don't even get any help. And
Mm-hmm.
now the new way is, yeah, you can still be tough. You can still be a quote unquote guy's guy. You can still be, all those things, but you also have a community too. And that's not weakness, that's strength.
Yes. And I tell you that even in vulnerable, being vulnerable is strength, being able
Amen.
to reach out to others, considering what probably their response to your situation would be, is strength. So I love vulnerability because it's what makes us human. We're not machines, we're not robots. We feel, we hear. So
Yeah, 100%. And if a man says to me like, "Oh, I don't do any of that stuff. Like, I don't need support. Like, I'm a man. I can do everything on my own."
mm,
My response is going to be, well, say like, do you value your survival? You
mhm.
know, because if you value your survival, and you go it alone, your odds of surviving are lower. That's just a fact. Like that's
Yes.
just there's no getting around that. So what I say is, like, if you think of yourself as a strong man,
Mhm.
someone who wants to provide for a family and be around for a long time, what stronger thing could you do than to get help getting through cancer? Make
Mhm.
sure that you live. There's nothing stronger than living and being around for the people you love.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. So I'm going to be talking to Dr. Charles Rogers from the University of Utah on my
Mhm.
podcast soon, and he is just an
Wonderful.
amazing Black man researcher, and he's taking on this issue of this masculinity problem, because he's actually putting research behind this to show that it is the guy. So men who identify as quote unquote strong
Mhm.
are the ones who are least likely to get cancer screenings. They're the least likely to get second opinions. And so it's interesting that the men who consider themselves strong are actually putting themselves in a vulnerable position.
Mhm.
So that's our message, is like, we want to show them that if you want to learn about your disease, if you want to conquer your disease, then you should be open to networking, community, and support, because those things are going to help you do that.
Absolutely. I like the fact that you're going to be having a conversation with this gentleman, and it's evidence-based, because it's true.
Yes.
These are facts, these are stats, whatever we do, we put those first.
I love
Um,
that. Yeah, because I'm very much like a storyteller. Like, I interview people. It's
so
very
I
anecdotal,
am.
but
Yes, we need
yes.
stats to
So
back up the facts. Yes.
exactly. So people like Dr. Rogers are out there gathering the data to say,
Mhm.
here's the deal.
True, true. And that will make everyone sit up, to know that, yes, this actually is the case. And there's, data to support it. That's wonderful. I can't wait for that conversation, a
Me
brother
too.
talking. I'm sure he's
Yes.
going to lay it out there for
Oh yeah.
everyone.
Yep.
That's fantastic, honestly. Thank you so much, Trev. So, I wanted to ask, what would you want that listener, that person watching, to know about colon cancer, being that you have been living with it
Yes.
for going on 5 years now? Touch wood, it will be 5 years soon. Um, what do you want someone to know?
I want people to know that colon cancer isn't just a old guy's disease anymore. The screening guidelines tell people that if you don't have any risk, if you don't have any like family history or no symptoms or anything else, 45 is now the age to get a colonoscopy. It used to be 50, because we're seeing so much more colorectal cancer in younger people. So there's a rise. There has been a rise in early onset colorectal cancer. So that's pretty much 45 or below. And we don't exactly know what's going on, but we know that there are more people in their 20s, 30s, 40s getting this disease versus what it was a long time ago. We even see teenagers now coming down with colorectal cancer, which is just as heartbreaking as it comes. So, so I don't want to, alarm people, scare people. Like, that's not the point. But the point is to just be aware of, again, at 45, you should be having a colonoscopy, but also just be aware of your body. So if you have symptoms, so let's talk just briefly about a
Mhm.
couple of symptoms. So anytime that you have blood in your stool, so you go to the bathroom and you see that you have blood in the toilet, that's a red flag. And maybe once in a while from a hemorrhoid or something like that, like that's normal. But if you see it more than a couple times, that's your indicator to call your doctor and talk about it. Abdominal pain, so new and persistent abdominal pain, just like that gut ache where you're feeling like, oh, my belly just doesn't feel right, and that's something that has been something that isn't going away. Talk
Mhm.
to your doctor. Unusual fatigue, so for me, my only symptom was persistent and unusual fatigue. So the type of fatigue where you're just like, whew, I am just struggling to make it through my day. And that's not like me. So if you're thinking like, why am
Yeah.
I'm just really, really tired and that's not like me, that's also another symptom. So if you're experiencing any of those things that I talked about, you should talk to your doctor about it right away. So that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give, is have a relationship with a primary care physician. Like, make sure that you if you don't have a family doctor, or if you don't have a primary care doctor, please get one. have that relationship so that you can get your annual screenings for whatever it is, and so that you can get blood work. Like if I had blood work, after age 40, it might make sense to have just an annual blood panel to look at just your basic blood work to see if there's anything going on. If I had that, I probably would have caught it before I was stage 4, because there are indicators in your blood as well. So again, any symptoms, talk to your doctor. There's no shame in this. Like you said, colon cancer is preventable and it's curable if you catch it early. If you are stage 1 through 3 colon cancer, your odds of being cured are very high, like 80+% or something like that. But at stage 4, your 5-year survival rate is only less than 15%. So there's a huge difference in catching it early versus catching it late. So just let's talk about this. Like everyone always talks about breast cancer, which is fantastic. I love my breast cancer sisters, but we also need to talk about lung cancer and colorectal cancer and prostate cancer and all the things, right? These are things that we should be aware of. And my final message on that is don't wait, because people think, oh, cancer is not going to happen to me. Colon cancer is that's for someone who's sick or has bad habits or bad nutrition, made bad choices. I'm not going to develop that. Well, that's what I thought too, because I was a pretty healthy dude. Like there was nothing in my lifestyle that suggested like I wasn't making a lot of bad choices with my alcohol or tobacco or food that might put you in the higher risk category. Some people just, for me, we kind of know what contributed, because turns out I have a genetic Lynch syndrome, which is a genetic disorder that puts me at a higher risk. But I know a lot of people with colon cancer who have no red flags for risk factors, no genetic issues, and they got colon cancer anyways. So if you think you're invincible, that's your first step to saying, well, maybe I should go check myself out.
Awesome. So, when you were going through this and you know better now, would you think that diet and nutrition plays a huge role in developing colon cancer?
I think it can. Again, I definitely think if people aren't eating clean, eating healthy, then you're definitely at higher risk of developing colon cancer and really other types of cancers as well. So yes, I do think that plays a role. I think, we all know that a healthy diet of whole foods, lots of fruits and vegetables, you're going to be less likely to develop a cancer. But like I said, there's also just plenty of cases out there that are unexplained, so it's not just the food and nutrition. There's other factors involved, and we're still figuring that out. Sure. I think that's going to be a long learning process, but yes, 100% encourage people to clean up your diet. Processed red meat, especially. I know there's tons of controversy going back and forth, but from everything I'm a journalist by training, and everything that I've read about and researched in my time around the food issue always goes back to that in terms of like grilled or processed red meats and that link to multiple cancers. So I'm not saying never to, I'm just saying my advice is moderation. If you're going to eat those foods, fine, but don't eat it 5 times a week. Exactly. Maybe once or twice a week. So you don't need to make a huge drastic change in your diet to avoid cancer, but there are simple things you can do. Making sure that everything in moderation when it comes to alcohol, red meats, processed foods, no brainer.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I absolutely.
Hand in hand with the nutrition is exercise. So you combine what you're talking about with the food, with a sedentary lifestyle, with people who are just not moving their bodies, not getting their blood flowing, it's basically sitting around and watching TV all the time. That's a recipe for disaster. So part of my message is definitely encouraging exercise to prevent cancer. The folks who exercise are at lower risk. And then when you do get cancer, if you're exercising, you're going to lower your risk of recurrence as well. So I definitely want to encourage exercise and good nutrition.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Now, would you care to tell us 1 or 2 things you wish you had known at the beginning of your journey?
Wow.
That's
putting
from the
me on the
left
hot
field.
seat here. Um, well, I guess going back before the journey, I wish that I had known to just check in with my doctor, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to just go see my PCP occasionally to get checked out and get some blood work, because I just wish that I had been able to catch it sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I definitely would love it if people would just, at the very least, just go get your physicals.
Yeah.
And follow your follow the cancer screening guidelines, you know, put out there by American Cancer Society, others. Like, you just follow the guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the second thing is, like, I wish that I had known hmm, how much I would be affected mentally. Like, when I was first diagnosed, it was shocking, but that wasn't even the worst of it. Like, I didn't realize how severe that slope was for me in terms of just kind of falling down into that pit. And
Yeah.
if I had known that, I probably would have set up, you know, I would have used the tools earlier, or maybe like had those around me, kind of like do some things to kind of see if maybe I didn't have to go so far into that dark place.
Into the
I mean,
abyss. Mm.
yeah, into the abyss, exactly. And looking back on it, it worked out, because I think if I had not experienced that depth of darkness, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. Like, I speak from that experience of being at the lowest of the low, to the point where I really had lost the will to live. And so that is something that is strengthening to me now. But man, it was not fun to go through, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So getting grips and putting in support systems around your mental health early, like right at your diagnosis, like, get those supports in place, because you might, right after diagnosis, you might feel like you're fine and like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm not going to have any mental problem at all, I got this. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a really tough spot,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally and mentally. So the support system and using those tools, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. That is heavy. But thank you for sharing that, Trev.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you for
you.
asking.
So if you could change one thing in the healthcare system today, what would it be?
uh, it would be the way that hospitals and providers are siloed. And so what I mean by that is, if you go to a hospital or local hospital or even a major cancer center, generally they're going to tell you what they have for options for you
Mm-hmm.
at their center.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so that literally one center told me, like, well, you know, we don't have any trials for you. We don't have any clinical trials for you. And in my mind as a patient, I just thought, like, well, they have access to like all the trials everywhere. So they would tell me if there was something somewhere else, like over in Seattle or down in Florida or at MD Anderson in Texas, like they'd recommend those.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way that it works. Like, at the end of the day, and it's not malicious, it's just that these hospitals are businesses, and they're kind of looking out for their own business.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes the doctors themselves are so focused on their own institutions
Mm-hmm.
that they don't know what's happening, like at other places, and they can't keep up with it. So
Yeah.
what I would change is this: I would have my doctor, if I went into a center and I needed to look at clinical trials, I would have my doctor be able to access a very simple trial finding tool. Specifically, like, he would just plug in all of my data, all of the things he knows about my cancer, like what, you know, like a fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they would fingerprint my cancer, run it through a AI system, and it would come back like, here's your top 10 or 15 trials for you specifically anywhere in the country. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah, so that kind of, like, you know, democratizing care, so that it's really hard to find a good clinical trial.
Yes.
Usually you have to like find a friend or someone in patient to patient knowledge.
Someone who
You got to navigate,
knows, spread the word, all that.
spread the word of mouth.
What you're saying, Trev, is very important.
Like, so they're going to plug in my information, and if they don't have the care that I need there,
Mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to recommend that I go somewhere else for the care. And literally you'll just get a readout of like, here's what the best care available for you is based on your
Yes.
cancer fingerprint.
Mm-hmm.
um And that is just like, that's like my dream.
Yes. And that's your dream, but it's something one can start now.
Yeah, people. So there's companies and organizations working on this.
Mm-hmm.
It's the next big thing because, it is with and again, I'm not casting like the healthcare system in America is what it is. Like I'm alive
It's
today
amazing,
because of it.
but
Yeah,
it's
I mean, I'm
fantastic.
alive today because of it, but we also know that it's broken in a lot of ways. And that's one of them, is that people are just so head down in their own spaces that it kind of, they put it on the patients to figure out what the best route is if it's not at that certain institution. So I would love to be able to, people should just be able to go to their local, or even do it on their own, but go to your local oncologist and be able to access, all this information through the
Information.
cloud in some way.
Yes.
And I do believe that, hopefully when my girls are grown up,
Mm-hmm.
that's the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be, and I, I'm not saying that healthcare should become totally, public. Like I think, but
No,
there is room.
there has to be
Yeah.
regulations,
Yeah.
data privacy, because people do crazy things with our data.
100%. Yep.
Mm. Oh, that's fantastic, Trev. Thank you so much for that. So, this has been so amazing speaking with you. I've learned so much. I know how far you've come, but I want to ask, what is the next best thing you're looking forward to? Let's say in the next 5 years. 5 years,
So,
a
so right
project.
now right now I am just completely focused on today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not that I don't
Fantastic.
think long term. It's just that with my chance of recurrence and my prognosis, like I don't believe that I have 100% control over my disease. Like, yes, I can use all the tools, and like we talked about earlier, I can do everything I can, but at the end of the day, it's up to whether you want to say God or Mother Nature or whatever higher power you believe in. Like, it's not my choice whether I pass away, from this disease. I'm going to put that in the hands of somebody else. I don't need that burden. But so my point is, I do think about what I want to accomplish and things I want to do with my family and things I want to do with Man Up to Cancer further out. But I am pretty much just locked and loaded on what's here in the present moment. What can I do today to make me fulfill my missions? And my number one mission is to be the dad, the father and the husband that I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then the number two mission is to help as many people as I can through my Man Up to Cancer platform and advocacy. So really it's just,
but that is it.
asking myself
You've
questions.
answered the
Yeah.
question. I mean, what could be more important than those two? Family and making sure that you continue to inspire and encourage, the
That's it.
community, the ones that are there and the ones to follow. We have younger guys. Cancer is until there's a cure for cancer, we're still going to be having a lot of cancer patients. So you're still going to be,
Right.
having a lot of, Gen Zs
Oh,
or whatever
yeah.
coming
So,
into your community.
and if I could, so that's exactly right. So I'm kind of like the grizzled veteran now, like 4 years into metastatic colon cancer is, I've lost a lot of friends of mine who haven't made it this far, and that's heartbreaking. And so it's really hard to sort of be in the space, but at the same time, I am now able to greet those men in who are newly diagnosed and give them hope and give them encouragement and hopefully give them some wisdom from
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned. And then they'll be able to do that, down the road. And it's that passing of wisdom, that
Mm-hmm.
passing of knowledge
Mm-hmm.
that binds us
Mm-hmm.
and is really the motivating thing for me, for sure. So because that's what people did for me.
Yeah.
When I was newly diagnosed, those people who have walked that road, that's the magic, is the human ability to have these huge hearts and to go through these such difficult challenges and then instead of just like checking out, going through those challenges and then passing on that wisdom about what they learned through it is just so people were so generous with me, and really all I'm doing now is paying that forward.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Trev. I'm so happy you've been able
Oh my
to
goodness.
share your insights and, come on and give that person watching, hope and encouragement that they too can face their diagnosis,
Absolutely.
have faith, and at the same time, for those who haven't been diagnosed, you have heard from Trevor that you look out for your symptoms, even if you can't go for a scan or MRI or whatever. A simple blood work will be able to determine if there's anything going on that you need to be concerned about. That's the way we do it here on Cancer Convos with Grace B, sharing very important insights and hoping that our community benefits from all that we put out here. So, Trevor, thank you so much for coming on. You've been listening to Trevor Maxwell. He's been amazing, and we continue to say our prayers that he'll continue to be here for a very, very long time and share his work with us. Thank you so much, Trev. And
the pleasure and honor is all mine. You are just a beacon, and it's just an honor to come on and chat with you. You're amazing. Keep doing the amazing work. And I think we're going to be friends for years to come.
I know, for a very long time to come. And I'm coming to Maine. I'm coming to meet you and your family very, very soon.
We have we have a guest room for you to stay in. So come on up.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. So you've heard it from Trevor, and wishing you love and light, and see you in the next episode. God bless. Ciao, ciao.